Somewhere in western Kansas, a combine stops in the middle of a field at 7 in the evening. The crop is ready. The weather window closes tomorrow. The machine is worth more than most American homes. It is equipped with satellite guidance, automatic header control, and a processor that tracks grain loss down to fractions of a bushel per acre. It is, by every engineering measure, the most capable harvesting machine ever built. And it will not tell the farmer what is wrong with it. One amber light, one alphanumeric code, no description, no location, no repair pathway. Just a number that means nothing without software the farmer is not permitted to own. For most of the 20th century, the combine harvester was the single largest capital investment on an American grain farm. It was also the most personal. A farmer who understood his combine understood his harvest. He knew the sound a rotor made when the crop was running too wet. He knew which bearing to check when the separator slowed. He kept the service manual in the cab and the right wrenches on the shelf. The machine was large, complex, and demanding. It was also knowable. That relationship between a farmer and the machine his livelihood depended on was not sentimental. It was practical. It was the foundation on which American grain farming was built. John Deere entered the self-propelled combine market in the 1950s and expanded aggressively through the following decade. The machines that came out of that era were gear-driven, chain-driven, and mechanically legible. Every major system, the feeder house, the rotor, the grain handling augers, the hydrostatic drive, could be diagnosed with a service manual, a test light, and tools already on any farm. Clearances were set by hand. Bearings were listed in dealer catalogs by standard designations available from any farm supply. The rotor to concave gap, which determined how aggressively the machine threshed, was adjusted with a wrench and measured in fractions of an inch. There was no software between the farmer and the answer. The dealer network that supported those machines was built to the same standard. At peak density, according to industry estimates, a John Deere dealer operated within practical driving distance of nearly every grain farm in the major producing states. Parts trucks ran regular routes. A retired dealer mechanic from the Central Grain Belt recalled that he could tear into a combine header on a Saturday afternoon and have it cutting again before Monday. The job needed nothing more than the service manual and what was already on the shelf. That was not a boast. It was a description of how the system was designed to work. The 1970s brought a genuine leap in harvesting capability. Rotary separation technology, which John Deere later integrated into its high-capacity lines to replace the conventional cylinder and straw walker system that had defined combines for decades, fundamentally changed how grain was processed. Where the older design moved grain through the machine in a linear pass, the axial rotor spun crop in a continuous helical path, separating grain with higher throughput and lower loss rates. The machines grew larger, capacity increased, loss rates fell. Farmers who had spent careers managing the limitations of the older design found the new machines could handle conditions: heavy wheat, tough corn, high moisture soybeans, that would have overwhelmed the previous generation. And the machines remained serviceable. Rotor concave segments were still adjusted by hand. Hydraulic header drives were still rebuildable in the field. Cylinder seals and pump cartridges were standard dealer stock. An agronomist who worked closely with combine operators through that era noted that the yield monitor was the first time a machine told a farmer something he could not see himself, and at the time, that felt like a gift. The electronics were information tools. They observed. They did not control. The farmer still held the decision. That distinction mattered more than anyone recognized at the time. By the late 1990s, the character of the electronics had changed. The combine was no longer a mechanical system with sensors attached. It was a networked machine, a controller area network, or CAN bus architecture, connecting every major system into a single electronic loop. The engine, the rotor, the header, the grain handling system, and the hydrostatic transmission all reported to and received instructions from a central controller. Fault codes were logged in electronic control modules. When something failed, the machine generated a code. That code was stored in the module. and the module would only reveal its full diagnostic information to one tool: John Deere's proprietary service advisor software, available exclusively to authorized dealers. Without Service Advisor, the operator saw a warning light, an alphanumeric string, nothing more. The same code that a dealer technician could read and address in an hour was for a farmer without authorization, a locked door. Independent repair shops found themselves in the same position. They could rebuild a hydrostatic pump, replace a rotor bearing, and recalibrate a feeder house drive. The one thing stopping them from returning the machine to the field was a locked module they were not authorized to touch, even when the fault was mechanical, not computational. A Kansas independent equipment technician put it plainly. He knew exactly what the machine needed, and the only barrier was a software permission he could not obtain. The combine had stopped at dusk. The amber light glowed on the screen. The dealer's next available technician was 3 days out. The weather forecast showed rain on day 2. That was not a mechanical failure. That was a structural condition built into the machine at the design stage. A farmer who cannot fix his own machine does not own it. He rents it from the company that locked it. The political response came from the fields outward. By the mid-2010s, farmer frustration with locked diagnostic systems had moved from individual complaint to organized resistance. In 2015, the United States Copyright Office held hearings on exemptions to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Farmers testified that software locks on agricultural equipment denied them the basic right to maintain what they had purchased. Rows of grain farmers sat in hearing rooms in work clothes, some still wearing field caps, holding printed fault codes with the alphanumeric strings circled in red pen. One code, one farmer testified, cost 3 days and several $100s to clear. Any mechanic in the room could fix it in an hour. By 2017 and 2018, right-to-repair legislation targeting agricultural equipment had been introduced in more than 20 states, including Nebraska and Kansas. The bills varied in scope. Some passed. More stalled. In January of 2023, John Deere signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation, committing to provide diagnostic tools and repair information to equipment owners and independent technicians. The language was measured. The commitment was real and also incomplete. Independent technicians reported that the expanded access fell short of dealer-level service advisor capability. The memorandum was signed. The architecture of the machine did not change. The used equipment market delivered the clearest verdict. Prices for older combined models, machines built in the final years before CAN bus control architecture became standard, rose sharply through the early 2020s. Auction prices for pre-software locked Deere combines climbed by reported figures, ranging from 40% to over 100% compared to earlier valuations, depending on condition and model year. At the same auctions, crowds gathered thickest around the older iron. Bidders walked the length of machines that were 2 decades old, opened engine side panels, ran hands along hydraulic lines. They were not looking for perfection. They were looking for accessibility. A South Dakota grain farmer bought a 23-year-old combine at auction for more than he had expected to pay. He chose it over a new machine for one stated reason. It was the last year before the lock came in. He knew he could keep it running himself. That decision, paying more for less technology to gain more control, was not unique to him. Farm Bureau surveys and agricultural trade publications reported a measurable and growing preference among grain farmers for older field-serviceable combines over new purchases, with repairability cited as the primary factor. The sales figures reflected it, not uniformly, not catastrophically, but persistently in a direction the new combine market could not ignore. The new machines were, by every performance metric, superior. Current large combine platforms integrate machine learning-based automatic header control, predictive rotor adjustment, and GPS-linked precision mapping that tracks yield variation down to individual passes across a field. Throughput has increased, grain loss has decreased, fuel efficiency has improved. The list price of a fully equipped large combine now easily exceeds $800,000, often crossing the $1 million mark when configured with advanced headers, more than many farm operations carry in annual revenue. At that price point, the inability to self-diagnose a fault during a 3-day harvest window is not an inconvenience. It is a financial exposure that scales with every hour the machine sits idle. Competing manufacturers noticed. C&H Industrial Brands and AGCO began positioning expanded repairability as a competitive differentiator in their combine marketing, according to industry analysts. The argument was not about horsepower or throughput. It was about who controlled the machine after the purchase. Federal right to repair legislation for agricultural equipment remained stalled in committee as of the mid-2020s. Some state-level bills had passed. The structure of the problem had not been resolved by law, by memorandum, or by market pressure sufficient to reverse the design philosophy that created it. The combine stopped in that Kansas field is still there, in some form, every harvest season. A different machine, a different farmer, the same amber light. The weather window still closes. The dealer is still days away. What was lost was not a particular model or a particular decade of engineering. What was lost was the premise that a farmer purchasing a machine for $500,000 was also purchasing the right to understand it. John Deere did not build worse combines. It built combines that treated the farmer's own competence as a liability to be managed, not a resource to be trusted. 3 generations of American grain farmers learned to fix what broke in the field because the field did not wait. The new machines have forgotten that. The farmers have not. A farmer who cannot fix his own machine does not own it. He just makes the payments.